it's important if you've got existing customers to do everything you can to defend and keep those customers.
I think that's such an ingenious win-win solution.
Whenever there's a bad situation, there's always a good situation as well. How do we capitalise on this going forwards as well? So they're kind of our topics of conversation for today.
Righto. So welcome to the third episode of the AutoTalk podcast. We've got a very special episode for everyone today. Our first ever guest on this podcast. So for those of you tuning in for the first time, my name's Glenn Harwood. I'm one of the co-founders of AlgoDriven. With me today, we've got Craig Stevens, the CEO of Doobie Cars, and the special guest is Joel Riemann. Joel, do you want to say hello and give us a bit of an overview of your background and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So we're based here in Australia, in Queensland, and our dealership's in the area known as Gympie. We're a multi-franchise, family-owned car dealership that's run by myself and my father. My father's had the business running for about 20 years now, and I've been working with him for the last 15. So our new car franchises include brands like Honda, Hyundai, Isuzu Ute, Mitsubishi Motors, and also the GWM or Great Wall brand make up our sort of Gympie operation. And then we have two other dealerships about an hour away on the Sunshine Coast with GWM franchises there as well. Those are newer sites, have been open for the last sort of 4 or 5 years. And we turn over roughly anything from 150 to 200 cars a month in our new and used car operations between those three locations.
Nice. That sounds like a pretty good operation. What's the mix of new and used?
Here in Australia, currently, new cars are pretty popular. So I would say we're moving approximately probably 3 or 3.5 new vehicles for every one pre-owned car. For the quality of the used car we need to sell in the Australian market based on our sort of our legal obligations with warranty and whatnot. Although we will trade more inventory than that, a lot of the lower grade stuff or older cars, we just can't recondition those cars and resell them and meet our legal obligations with warranty. So a lot of those cars just go to auction or wholesale. We can't retail them as a franchise dealership. So, yeah.
Thanks for joining our podcast. As we were talking earlier, it's our third one, but our first one, we actually managed to get 10,000 views. So no pressure, but we need your content to give us at least 12 or 13,000 views. So we're expecting a lot from you on this.
All right, I'll keep that in mind.
I'm sure you do wonderfully well. Have you ever been to Dubai? Have you ever been here?
No, I've never travelled that far to the Middle East. Done a little bit of Southeast Asia in the US. With work on different events and things like that, automotive, but not to the Middle East or Europe yet.
Well, we made the headlines a month ago. Did you catch any of our headlines?
It didn't make big news here in Australia, but when you guys reached out to me about this podcast, I had a bit of a look online and just researched the topic a little bit, and I was blown away by what I saw, actually.
Yeah, for a desert, we had a lot of rain.
Yeah, so, no, it's not the type of thing that comes to mind when I think of Dubai and what I've probably seen, in TV and media, movies and those sorts of things. Having a flood there is definitely not the type of thing that comes to mind when I think of Dubai whatsoever.
There's some pretty good YouTube videos.
Well, yeah, so we used to have deserts and now we've got beautiful lakes and green countryside. It's amazing. And that's true, the desert has turned into this beautiful green countryside. It's amazing. But we didn't bring you on here to talk about beautiful green countryside. We did have something like 24 months of rain in 24 hours, something ridiculous like that. I mean, obviously that caused a lot of issues here in the UAE from an automotive point of view. And we thought it'd be fantastic to get someone on our podcast who's been through this before, who's seen what the impact of flooding, and hopefully give the dealers who are listening in here some tips on how to deal with floods. I don't think this is a one-off incident with Dubai. I think we're going to see floods going forwards, how you deal with consumers, and whenever there's a bad situation, there's always a good situation as well. How do we capitalize on this going forwards as well? So they're kind of our topics of conversation for today.
Yeah, no, definitely can touch on a few of those things, having some decent first-hand experience of going through a pretty major flood event here in Gympie, where we are. And I might give you a little bit of background about what happened here just over 2 years ago now. So where we are in Gympie, it's a region that's actually a little bit known to flood here anyway. And when we have a flood, it can range anything from 10 meters up to what we had 2 years ago, which was just shy of 24 meters. So the flooding side of things for us isn't uncommon because we have minor flooding throughout the year. There can be a 10-meter flood from the local river system that flows through our area because we're sort of inland and regional. And when we get, a lot of wet ground and then a huge amount of rain, the water just can't get away fast enough and the river backs up and starts to flood the local area. So our local area is sort of built where most people are well out of that flood area. But when the water starts to exceed the 18 to 20 metre mark, it can start to impact businesses and stuff in the region. And so when we established our business and built it in the past, we built everything above the 21 metre mark because that hadn't really flooded, in the last 100 years, sort of 50 to 100 years, that hadn't flooded beyond that. There was previous sort of data suggesting, 150, 100 years ago, they might have had a couple of bigger floods, but certainly nothing for a long time. So here we were sitting here at 21 meters and we just got a crazy flood in town. Things got up. We got up to around about the 16 to 18 metre mark, and we were prepared, or we thought we were prepared for the event, and we spent days moving vehicles in the rain and getting things up high to make sure that at our business nothing was, like our vehicle inventory at least, wasn't going to get flooded. Some of the low-lying areas where we store vehicles and have cars on display at our dealership, we knew those areas were going to flood, so we moved vehicles out and prepared the best we could, and we thought we were in a good situation. But unfortunately, Mother Nature had other ideas. And on day 4 of our flood event, in the evening that evening, when we were already at the 18, 19 metre mark, Mother Nature decided to pretty much dump about the same amount of rain we'd had over the last week overnight. And the water level jumped from sort of 19 metres where we were safe and sound, high and dry, and pushed up over that evening to around 23.9 metres where we actually had the water then move inside our premises, move on to where we had cars stored at the time as well, and really started to, things got pretty dire for us. Luckily for me, I came down during the evening. I was a little bit nervous, so I decided to come and have a look and see what was going on in the pitch dark. Because the interesting thing is when we have a flood, because businesses start to flood and electrical grid infrastructure starts to go underwater, they actually turn all the power off. So even when you're trying to get to your business, there's no electricity in the premise. So you can't actually have any lights running. If you've got electric doors to showrooms, all this stuff becomes unoperational and it really creates a challenge. So when I arrived at the dealership, it was water was starting to come in the building. It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and I sent out an SOS to a few staff members who managed to come down and help us. And we spent the next 4 to 5 hours trying to move cars to higher ground in the pouring rain. And it was just absolute bedlam. We had to probably move in excess of 100 cars in the pouring rain. And we actually had, trucks parked on the highway. People just came over and randomly were helping us. We were giving keys to brand new cars to people we didn't even know and just asking them to jump in the cars and drive them up the road to higher ground and park the cars and bring the keys back. It was just absolute chaos, but we did manage to virtually save all of our new car inventory, but we did end up losing a handful of second-hand, lower value cars that were the last cars we tried to move. We started at the most expensive stuff and worked our way down. So we saved all the new stuff, but we did end up getting about 10 pre-owned cars or thereabouts flooded during the flood event. So we ended up driving some of these cars out pretty much chest deep while sitting in these vehicles and trying to get them to higher ground and literally opening the door of the car and just letting water flood out of the vehicle while driving it. It was an experience I never want to repeat, that's for sure.
I mean, so many questions. I mean, this lasted for how long? This was like a week's worth of flooding, was it?
The build-up was nearly a week leading into it, but the peak of the flood and all of the action really unfolded from midnight till 7 a.m. Because we were, at that point, the end of the flood or the precipice was a flash flood event. The water, the minute it stopped raining, the water started going down. You could literally see it going down in 5-minute intervals, about an inch at a time. But it's the nature of water is once it gets in, it just destroys pretty much anything it gets to, be it furniture in the premise, or inside vehicles, stock and inventory through our service division, or in our service department where we had tools and equipment. We had technician work boxes that were full of thousands of dollars of power tools that got water through them. The oil storage for our dealership, oil likes to rise above the water, so that lifted up and tipped over the oil storage, which became an oil slick through the workshop and leaked into the waterway. It was a bit of an environmental problem, whatnot, and like the flood itself just has all sorts of stuff moving through it because it gets up so high. It lifts up foreign material from other properties and dumps them on your land. So yeah, the devastation afterwards was pretty serious.
Wow.
Yeah, that sounds like quite the event, but I think by the same token, having only 10 cars damaged was probably a good outcome compared to how bad it could have been.
Oh, if we had more than $5 million worth of inventory on the line, and that could have sent, like, our business broke over that event, because here in Australia where we are, because of the way it floods here and the water comes up, you're not covered by insurance. So the vehicles, if they're lost, they're not actually covered by insurance, because your job is to get them out of the way as the water comes up. You can't just walk away and expect insurance to cover it. They do not cover you for this. So for us, yeah, it was great outcome. It could have been much, much worse, and we're very lucky that we got away and we didn't. And there was dealers here in Australia during this weather event in other states and other areas that were nowhere near as lucky as us. They lost hundreds of cars, and they're still trying to pay that back 2 years later and recover those losses.
Is that why you were happy to give the keys to anyone, because you're going to lose the car anyway? So
yeah, the interesting thing was at the time the town itself is also a bit of an island because it's cut off in every direction by the flood. So the car was never going anywhere. The best they could do is get it a few kilometres up the road, but they weren't getting it out of town. There's so many things that can be damaged during this event, not just vehicles, computers in the building. You've got owner's manuals that go with cars, so that you've got a set of books, you've got another set of keys. Just all of that stuff had to be got up high. So we were trying to recover all of that during this same time. We're trying to grab computers, grab owner's manuals, grab documentation and files from the business. It was absolute chaos during the flood event. Just trying to recover as much. We still lost a lot, but we could have lost so much more. So I'm still very thankful to this day.
So if you were to think about that flood, I mean, what are the kind of 2 or 3 things that you would do differently the next time you get a flood warning?
Yeah, you've definitely got to have, and we have implemented this more into our business, is you've got to have a bit of a flood plan. Going into this, we were probably a little bit naive that we just thought, hey, we'll just get the cars up higher. We'll get the cars up higher, but we weren't probably prepared for the other things in our business that we needed to do. So we've modified those processes. And the difficult thing with our town is, as the water level goes up, a lot of people that live in our region travel to work and they get cut off by low-lying areas like rivers and whatnot. So what happens is our workforce also becomes very isolated. Of our 50 plus employees, we might be lucky to be only able to get 10 to our premise. So we've made a bit more of a plan now that if people want to go home during a flood event, they need to put away all their stuff before they go, make sure they've done what they can to prepare before they leave the premise, and that sort of thing. We have high storage in our business too, so next time we'll be making more of an effort just to pack more things up and put them up high. We were just too complacent this time, thinking 21 meters is never going to get there, even, and the reality is it can go that high and higher. So yeah, more preparation next time, and probably being a little bit less complacent, or a lot less complacent. We'll be much more cautious, and we've had one minor flood event since then, and we took maximum precaution. It was in the end, it didn't really matter because the event was nowhere near as bad, but we took a lot more preparation as a precaution. It's painful, but it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, for sure. And that's interesting. And I think the thing with the flood, which we're discovering now in Dubai too, there's obviously the event, but then there's the knock-on effects which go on for weeks and months after, replacing those cars, but also, supporting the consumers and the local community as they both need their car fixing. Maybe they try and trade in their cars. What did you experience in the sort of the weeks after the flood?
Yeah, definitely. Like, it was somewhat of a crisis to our community. And we weren't heavily affected, overall. our business was interrupted for about a week before we could be operational again. So, and we had great support from our community. We were very lucky that as one of the last businesses to go underwater, we were also one of the very first businesses that people in our region actually flocked in. They couldn't go anywhere. We were still an island town, and lots of people just came down the next day and started helping us clean up, and the following day. And so we got a lot of support ourselves, and everyone came in to help. And then we literally spent 5 days cleaning the place out, taking stuff to the dump. We of the affected vehicles that we had, we were trying to be very quick to action. Even though those cars were flood damaged, we worked very hard to try and recover or repair those cars that we could. Because time is of the essence. If you do get water into a vehicle, if you get it drained, cleaned out, dried out, computers out of the vehicle, all the computers sprayed with contact cleaner, some things can be recovered. If you leave them for a longer period, the aftermath after 24 to 48 hours gets pretty severe. You'll see vehicles, for where we are at least, the flood waters end up being pretty disgusting. You can have everything from oil to sewage and stuff in there. And when that water's in the vehicle and then it's closed up, what happens is the moisture gets into everything. It penetrates all the trims. Because it's a closed system, and the heat, when the sun comes out, all of a sudden mold just explodes inside vehicles absolutely everywhere. And any surface that's come into contact with that water can start to grow mold, and that, long term, that can be toxic for people if they're in the vehicle. So we stripped the cars that we had, and luckily it was only a small volume of them. We stripped them absolutely back to the bare shell, removed all the trims, had those professionally cleaned, because we decided to keep those cars for our own usage rather than ever try and sell those cars, because we didn't want to take on the risk of selling those flooded cars to a consumer, where if there was ever any mechanical problems, and luckily our cars weren't submerged for more than an hour or two. With the flood water, it was a very short period, but even there we had complications with computers, and we were having to buy replacement components, because even if the vehicle just got a foot of water in the car, it was still enough to damage computers and things in the vehicles.
You must have had consumers come to you with cars that were flood damaged, and maybe they weren't honest with you about that, or maybe they were. But what was your experience with people coming in with flood damage trying to sell them?
Yeah, we didn't have too many consumers coming to us with flood damaged vehicles, because like a lot of vehicles in Australia, insurance-wise, they'll almost immediately write the car off. We have a very comprehensive register here in Australia known as a PPSR system, where information's recorded by insurance companies. If the vehicle's ever assessed for insurance and it's deemed that it's been flooded, they just won't put these types of cars back on the road, because of the risk of not being able to guarantee the vehicle from an electrical point of view, from the mold and stuff in the car. So most customers would go down the insurance line. Their car would be written off and sent to auction. Whether or not it gets rebirthed into the market is a bit of a risk. So we're constantly checking. Like, we have a very tight and rigid process that every car we assess to purchase is checked on this register to make sure it's not. In the industry, we would also be vigilant around the time this takes place, that customers, when presenting cars, if there's any telltale signs of things like sediment in headlights, sediment in fog lights, an unusual smell inside a vehicle, a damp, moist smell inside the car, we would do additional checks on the car, pulling up seats and things like that, looking under the carpets. Because quite often, if people, try and just clean the car out, there'll be silt and dirt underneath the carpets inside the flooring. So removing trims, for us where we are, there's so much sediment in the water because it's a river flow. As it's flowing downstream, it just becomes thick full of mud. So when the floodwaters get into stuff, they leave sediment everywhere inside the vehicle. Even if someone tried to wash it out without stripping the car bare, they're never going to truly get rid of all of that either. So, you're vigilant around that time. And then as an industry, Australia's very regulated when the cars are written off. They go on the register. And if we ever inspect a car and go to buy it, the first thing we do before the transaction's completed is we check if the car's on the written off vehicle register. And if it is, we just wouldn't accept it as part payment on a car.
So it sounds like between the register and stripping the car down a little bit, it'd be pretty difficult to trade in one of these cars after it's been flood damaged.
Yeah. The risk is to like the most common risk we find is private consumers who have bought a car privately from a non-franchise dealer aren't aware that they've bought a flood damaged car. So the ones that you do come across, it's a heartbreaking situation because the consumers bought the car in good faith, only to find out that they now own a vehicle that they can't trade in at a dealership and that we won't accept. And is possibly worth less than half of what they thought it was because of this written off, it's a written off vehicle register, and that vehicle's only ever going to really find another home in that private market where, somebody else isn't going to realize of the same problem of the car, but franchise dealers just won't touch them.
Yeah, it's a horrible situation for everyone, for the business, the community, for the consumer. But there are insurance checks that come out, and there are consumers back in the market, and we have to also capitalize on these unfortunate situations. Is there a way you can capitalize on these situations to either work with insurance companies or work with consumers to help them get into the next
Yeah, definitely. Like this event and other events like this that we've been through, one of the ones we get here in Australia a little bit is a hailstorm as well. And during that too, we see a high volume of customers coming into the market quickly because their vehicles have been written off or destroyed. So we try and manage that and I guess capitalize on the opportunity to help more customers, but also support existing customers. A lot of our customers will reach out to us during this time saying, hey, I need a car because of this. So it can create more dealership activity. We'll normally send communication to our customers via EDMs, just saying, hey, if you've been affected and you need a vehicle, please reach out to us. We've done other things in the past too. Sometimes with events like this, you can have, if it's widespread, you can have a little bit of a shortage of supply if your inventory's been heavily affected, and that can also make the situation difficult. So sometimes we've done things like purchased bulk ex-hire cars or lease cars to do rentals to customers, where customers want a new car. We couldn't supply that straight away, but they can't wait. We had a hail event similar to that once here. So we actually bought 10 or 15 ex-rental vehicles, and we just used those as like a replacement car till the customer's new car could come in, because a lot of our customers were like, hey, if I can't get this off you today, I'll just go 2 hours away and buy it from somebody else. But as long as we could get the customer mobile, they were normally happy to wait for us to get a car in over the next 2 to 4 weeks. So what we found was, if we could get the customer a hot free car, hey, buy your car with us, your local dealer or your repeat dealership, we'll give you a free car to as a rental or a hire car for free till your new car arrives. If there's any sort of supply constraint there, we try and overcome that by going, well, hey, let's buy 15 or 20 used cars from a rental company, and then we can put those into the market. We'll loan those to customers over the next couple of months, and then when things start to settle down again, we'll just feed those cars into our used car operation and sell the used cars after that too.
Is there any way to work with the insurance companies so the insurance companies come directly to you?
I love that. It's such a win-win idea.
Insurance companies are definitely out to get the lowest cost of replacement for an insurance company. And we're finding more and more here in Australia, they are really trying to probably pay a consumer out, which is good for us because some insurance companies sort of put the process out to tender to drive the cost down for themselves of their replacement. So that can be a difficult situation because the cost of a replacement vehicle just gets driven into the ground and there's not really good return on it. You're not making any revenue from it. But more recently, because we've had global constraints on supply during COVID, a lot of insurance companies are pivoting more towards paying a customer out because it wraps up the transaction very quick for the insurance company. And that's the same thing again, where just during events like this, sending out EDMs and communication to customers saying, if you're affected, we'd like to help you, getting the conversation going so that when the customer's looking to replace their vehicle, that they do want to talk to you. And if you're the first point of contact, then it's a good opportunity to help them.
I was just going to say, I love that rental car idea. I mean, I think that's so ingenious and it's such a win-win. You're going to make money on selling the new car, the consumer's mobile, and you're probably even going to make a little bit of money on the used car after the consumer's lent it. I think that's such an ingenious win-win solution for both you and the customer.
Yeah, with an existing customer, the last thing you want is to lose them to another business. From a convenience point of view, that you can't get them. Like once we get a customer mobile and they can get around, most customers are pretty understanding that the process of getting their new vehicle in might take a couple of weeks. as long as they can get from work and home to the shops. And then long term, you also end up keeping that customer. The last thing you want to do is have a repeat customer, who's bought 3 vehicles from you, start a relationship with another business, because you might not see them back ever again, So, it's important if you've got existing customers to do everything you can to defend and keep those customers.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that was a major pain point here where, consumers didn't have a car. They had to go to a hire company. The cars were not great and very expensive, and everyone was having just a bad experience. And I think that was forcing them to think about, I just need to buy a car quickly. So I think you're right.
Desperation, and people buy the wrong car, and that sort of thing too. So there's always that risk. But if you can support the customer in that situation, and a lot of people will capitalize on it. Rental prices go through the roof as demand goes up, so people pay exorbitant prices for a hire car as well.
Yeah. Well, look, it stopped raining now, and now it's getting up to like 40 odd degrees. So people don't want to be out walking. So a car is absolutely essential.
Definitely.
Yeah, great stuff. I think, Glenn, we should just recap, I think, on some of these great points. Kind of my takeout from you, Joel, was to have a plan, but plan for the worst, and I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think, to inspect the cars, just be absolutely thorough. We don't have the same database as you have, but I think, that level of inspection and just checking everything before you, either purchase or sell. I think keeping close to the customer and the rental idea, as Glenn said, is genius, and that's a really good idea. And working as a community, I think that was, great to hear that, the community supported you to get back onto your feet.
Yeah, it was two-way. Like, we had some customers who had cars at our dealership too that were affected, like cars that were pulled apart for repair that were unmovable, and those vehicles were affected and written off under insurance. But at the same time, we supported those customers with we loaned those customers cars so that they could keep their businesses running, because it was a pretty heartbreaking event for some of those customers that their vehicle was here for repair. And if we had the engine out of it, there was just no way for us to move that vehicle from our workshop. We had some customers affected, unfortunately, too. We supported those customers, and then other businesses in town that had lost stuff. We were just chipping in where we could. If they needed a car, we'd probably loan them a car. If they're an existing customer, we might just help them out as well, because doing that sort of thing is what gets your customer life.
A question for the consumer: all these cars that you moved up the hills, which car was the best in the rain?
In the rain? Well, I can tell you what, I never thought I'd see a second-hand Honda Accord drive in a metre of water with a bow wave over the windscreen. That was pretty impressive. And then after that car dried out and we kept that car here, we've used it for the last 2 or 3 years, and that thing's still going. So that was pretty phenomenal to see a Honda Accord go through that much water and then dry out and clean out all the computers and manage to get that car functional again. So that was something to behold.
There you go. Well, that might be the best insight from the whole interview.
I don't know if Honda engineered the car to do that, but whatever they've done, they've made a Honda Accord a pretty tough car, I'd say.
Right. Well, I appreciate joining us this week on AutoTalk and sharing your story, Joel.
Absolute pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Joel. Great to meet you. Thanks for your time.